I want to tell you something first. For the next few minutes, forget grammar. Forget vocabulary lists. Forget the idea that fluent English belongs only to talented people. Forget the voices that told you you were too late, too old, or not smart enough. Because this is not a lesson. This is a transformation story. This is about identity, not information. This is about becoming someone new, not learning something new. For 21 days, I didn't study English. I didn't memorize rules. I didn't chase perfection. I didn't wait until I felt ready. I didn't hide behind silence. Instead, I lived inside English. I woke up with it. I walked with it. I spoke to myself when no one was listening. I made mistakes out loud. I felt uncomfortable on purpose. And slowly, something began to change. My voice changed first. It became stronger, clearer, more present. Then my fear started to disappear, not because I became perfect, but because I became brave. I stopped asking for permission to speak. I stopped translating my thoughts. I stopped judging every sentence before it left my mouth. And one day, without realizing it, I crossed an invisible line. I was no longer a learner waiting to be fluent. I was a speaker who used English to live, to think, and to express real ideas. This story is not about talent. It is not about accents. It is not about grammar books or magic tricks. It is about a system. A simple, repeatable system that trains your mouth, your mind, and your confidence together. If you stay with me until the end, you won't just understand English better. You will understand why fluency is not a gift you were born with. It is a skill you build, step by step, day by day. For years, I told myself the same sentence. I know English, but I can't speak. Maybe you know that sentence too. Maybe you have said it quietly to yourself after watching another video, finishing another lesson, or closing another book. On the surface, it sounds reasonable. It sounds honest. But deep inside, that sentence became a cage. I watched videos. I understood podcasts. I could follow movies with subtitles. I knew grammar rules. I knew tenses. I knew what was correct and what was wrong. On paper, everything looked fine. But the moment someone looked at me and waited for my answer, something broke. My mouth froze. My voice became small. My thoughts raced faster than my words. Fear took control, and silence filled the space where English should have been. I was not stupid. I was not lazy. I was simply untrained. For a long time, I believed the problem was my brain. I thought I needed more vocabulary, more grammar, more explanations. I thought one more course would finally fix me. One more book, one more teacher. But nothing changed because I was solving the wrong problem. The truth was uncomfortable. The problem was not my brain. The problem was that no one ever taught me how to train my system. No one taught me that speaking is physical. No one taught me that confidence is built through action. No one taught me that fluency is not knowledge, but coordination. My mouth was not trained. My mind was trapped in translation. My confidence was weak because it had never been exercised. I had information, but no repetition. I had understanding, but no automatic response. I had potential, but no system. So every time I tried to speak, my system collapsed. My brain sent ideas, but my mouth could not deliver them. My confidence disappeared before the first sentence was finished, and each failure reinforced the same lie. I know English, but I can't speak. That lie followed me everywhere. It followed me into meetings. It followed me into conversations. It followed me into silence.
And slowly, it became part of my identity. I stopped trying. I stopped believing change was possible. Until one moment, when I finally understood something simple but powerful. People who speak fluently are not smarter. They are not more talented. They are trained differently. They did not study more. They practiced differently. That realization changed everything. I stopped chasing more knowledge. I stopped collecting information. I stopped waiting to feel ready. Instead, I made a decision that felt risky and uncomfortable. I decided to stop studying English, and I decided to start living in it. Not someday, not slowly, not when I felt confident. I committed to 21 days of full immersion into speaking, thinking, listening, and acting in English. Those 21 days were not about perfection. They were about breaking the lie I believed for years, and that was the beginning of everything. It was uncomfortable because it removed my excuses. I could no longer blame teachers, schools, or time. The responsibility was mine. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. If the problem was training, then training could fix it. If fear was learned, courage could be learned too. This was not about becoming perfect in English. This was about becoming active, present, and willing to speak before feeling ready. That decision, more than any lesson, marked the true beginning of my transformation. It created momentum, discipline, and belief, and it prepared me to rebuild my voice, my habits, and my identity from the ground up without excuses remaining.
The first truth shocked me. My brain understood English, but my mouth was not ready to speak it. So I stopped reading, I stopped thinking silently, and I started using my voice. Every day I stood in front of a mirror. I looked into my own eyes, and I spoke out loud, not perfectly, not fluently, but honestly. I repeated simple sentences again and again. I recorded my voice. I listened even when I didn't like the sound. At the beginning, it felt uncomfortable and strange. My mouth felt heavy, my jaw stayed tight, and my tongue moved slowly. When I tried to speak, my words came out broken and weak. I realized something important that no book had ever explained to me. Speaking is not a mental skill. Speaking is a physical skill. Just like playing the piano or lifting weights, your mouth needs training. It needs repetition, pressure, and daily use. So I committed fully to using my voice every single day. I spoke to myself when no one was listening. I spoke in the mirror, even when I felt awkward. I spoke slowly, clearly, and without rushing. I stopped whispering in my head and started speaking with my full voice. I recorded myself every day, even when I hated how I sounded. Listening to my recordings was uncomfortable, but it was powerful. I could hear my hesitation, my pauses, and my fear, but I could also hear progress. Day by day, my mouth became more familiar with English sounds. My tongue moved faster, my jaw opened more, and my words flowed more easily. Something else happened too. As my mouth improved, my confidence followed. I was no longer afraid of hearing my own voice. Fear lost its grip because action replaced hesitation. I understood then why studying alone never worked for me. Books trained my eyes, but speaking trained my body, and fluency lives in the body. Those first 3 days did not make me fluent, but they broke the silence. They taught my mouth to participate instead of hiding. They showed me that speaking is not about knowing everything. It is about using what you already know. That realization changed how I approached the next 18 days, because once your mouth is trained, everything else becomes possible. Training my mouth was the foundation, and without it, nothing else could stand. For the first time, English felt physical, real, and alive inside me. I was no longer waiting for confidence to appear. I was building it every time I opened my mouth. These small, repetitive actions created momentum. Momentum created belief, and belief created consistency. Consistency made speaking feel normal instead of dangerous. And when speaking feels normal, fear no longer controls you. By the end of the third day, I was not fluent, but I was active, and being active was the real victory. It proved that my voice was not broken, it had simply been untrained. Once I understood that, I stopped blaming myself. I stopped believing the lie that I could not speak. Instead, I believed something new and powerful. My voice could grow if I trained it. And that belief pushed me forward into the next stage of my transformation. Those first 3 days taught me a lesson no classroom ever had. English is not something you hold in your head. It is something you express through your body and voice. And once I felt that truth, there was no turning back. My journey had truly begun, not in books, but in action, repetition, and courage. That was only the beginning. Then came the hardest habit. I stopped thinking in my native language. When I woke up, my first thought was in English. When I walked, I named what I saw. This is the street. I feel tired. I want to improve. No translation, no perfection, just real thoughts in real time. At first, my brain resisted, but then something powerful happened. English stopped being a subject. It became my internal voice. That's when I learned this truth. Fluency is not vocabulary size. Fluency is thinking speed. During the first days, my mind fought back. It felt slow, uncomfortable, and empty. I searched for words that refused to come. My thoughts felt simple, almost childish, and my ego hated that feeling. I wanted complex sentences. I wanted to sound intelligent, but English did not care about my pride. It demanded presence, not performance. I realized how deeply translation controlled me. Every sentence used to travel through 2 languages before reaching my mouth. That delay created hesitation, fear, and silence. So I made a rule. I would not translate. If I did not know a word, I would describe it. If my sentence sounded simple, I would accept it. Speed mattered more than accuracy. I began naming objects around me throughout the day. A chair, a door, a screen, a sound. These small actions created a direct connection between my life and English. The language stopped living in books and started living in moments. My brain slowly adjusted to this new rule. I narrated my actions quietly as I moved. I am standing, I am walking, I am thinking, I am tired but focused. These sentences were not impressive, but they were powerful. They trained my brain to stay inside English without escape. At night, I reviewed my day in English. Not perfectly, but honestly. I spoke about what happened, what I felt, and what I wanted to change. These reflections strengthened my internal dialogue and replaced translation with instinct. By the 6th day, something shifted. My thoughts no longer paused to ask permission. English appeared automatically, without effort. The words were still simple, but they were fast, and speed created confidence. English stopped being something I switched on. It became the background of my thinking. That was the moment I understood that fluency is not built by adding more words, but by removing delay. When thinking becomes faster, speaking becomes natural, and when speaking feels natural, fear disappears. I was no longer chasing fluency. I was experiencing it, quietly, moment by moment, inside my own mind. This stage taught me patience. It forced me to accept simplicity as strength. Children do not translate when they learn. They respond. They react. They live inside the language without judging themselves. I finally understood why this method works. Thinking speed builds automatic response, and automatic response builds flow. Grammar comes later. Vocabulary expands naturally, but speed creates freedom. Each hour I stayed in English, the language wrapped itself more tightly around my thoughts. By the end of the 6th day, silence no longer scared me. My mind knew how to move forward, even with limited words. That skill alone changed everything and prepared me for deeper challenges ahead. I felt lighter, faster, and more present in conversations with myself. English no longer waited for translation approval. It moved when I moved. Thought by thought, moment by moment, the language stopped following me and started leading me forward with quiet confidence and growing clarity. This was not fluency yet, but it was the foundation that made fluency inevitable and unstoppable over time for my future. Next, I trained my mouth like an athlete trains muscles. I used the pen technique. It felt strange, it felt uncomfortable, but when I removed the pen, my speech felt lighter, clearer, freer. I wasn't fixing my accent, I was building muscle memory. Because pronunciation is not about sounding native, it's about having control. When I first placed the pen between my teeth, I laughed. My mouth felt stiff and awkward. Words sounded distorted, and my jaw resisted every movement. It was frustrating, and my instinct was to stop. But I reminded myself why athletes train under pressure. Difficulty creates adaptation. Speaking English requires physical strength. The tongue must stretch, the jaw must open, the lips must move with intention. Before this, my mouth stayed lazy. It moved just enough to survive, not enough to speak clearly. The pen forced my muscles to work harder than normal. I chose 3 simple sentences each day, short, clear, useful sentences. I spoke them slowly with the pen in my mouth, 5 times each. Every repetition burned slightly. My jaw felt tired. My tongue felt heavy. That discomfort meant progress. After 2 minutes, I removed the pen and spoke the same sentences again. The difference was immediate. My mouth felt open. My words felt sharper. My voice carried more strength. I felt in control instead of fighting my own mouth. This training taught me something important. Most pronunciation problems are not mental, they are mechanical. People blame accents, but accents are habits. Habits can be retrained. When your mouth learns new movements, clarity improves naturally. I was not trying to sound American. I was not chasing a perfect accent. I was training precision, control over sound, control over speed, control over clarity. That control created confidence. Each day, my mouth became stronger. My jaw opened wider without effort. My tongue reacted faster. Sounds connected smoothly. English stopped feeling tight and started feeling flexible. This process reminded me of running with weights. When you remove the weight, your body feels light. The pen created resistance. Normal speaking became easier afterward. That ease was addictive. I practiced in front of the mirror after every pen session. I watched my face. I watched my mouth move. That visual feedback trained awareness. I stopped speaking from fear and started speaking from control. There were moments I sounded funny. I accepted that. Growth is rarely comfortable. Actors, singers, and speakers train this way for a reason. Their voices are tools. Tools require maintenance. By the end of the 9th day, my pronunciation improved noticeably. People asked me to repeat less. I felt less tension. My voice carried authority instead of hesitation. That change did not come from theory, it came from repetition. This stage taught me discipline. Short sessions, daily effort, no shortcuts. Muscle memory does not respond to motivation, it responds to consistency. I understood that fluency is physical before it is emotional. When the mouth obeys, fear retreats. When the muscles cooperate, confidence rises. These 3 days rewired my relationship with speaking. English no longer felt fragile, it felt solid, grounded, reliable. I stopped worrying about how I sounded. I trusted my mouth to deliver my thoughts. That trust mattered more than any accent. Training like an athlete means respecting the body. It means showing up even when it feels uncomfortable. It means repetition without drama. By the end of this stage, my mouth was no longer an obstacle. It became an ally. And once your mouth works with you, not against you, speaking stops feeling like a risk. It starts feeling like power. Here's something no one tells you. Confidence is not a feeling. Confidence is a trained response. So every day, I spoke affirmations out loud, not softly, with strength. I spoke about my life for 5 minutes. No script, no stopping. I did one brave action daily. And slowly, my identity changed. I was no longer waiting to feel confident. I was becoming confident through action. For years, I believed confidence would arrive someday. I thought it would appear after perfect grammar, after more vocabulary, after enough practice in silence. I waited, and while I waited, fear stayed in control. During these 3 days, I stopped waiting. I decided to manufacture confidence deliberately, like training a muscle that had never been used. Every morning, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked into my own eyes and spoke affirmations with intention. I said them slowly, clearly, and without apology. The words felt strange at first. My voice shook. My chest felt tight. But I did not lower my volume. I did not rush. I stayed present and finished every sentence. At night, I repeated the same process, not to convince myself magically, but to teach my nervous system a new reaction. Speaking did not mean danger. Speaking meant growth. Then came the 5-minute speaking sessions. No preparation, no notes. I talked about my day, my thoughts, my past, and my goals. I allowed pauses, but not silence. Sometimes I repeated myself. Sometimes I searched for words, but I did not stop. Stopping would teach my brain to escape. Continuing taught it resilience. Each session ended with relief, not exhaustion. I realized confidence was growing because I stayed in motion. Fear lost power when I refused to negotiate with it. The brave actions came next, 1 per day, small, uncomfortable, intentional. A voice message, a public sentence, a short conversation. None of them were dramatic. All of them mattered. Every action sent the same signal. I speak even when I feel nervous. That message slowly replaced the old story of avoidance. By the 12th day, something subtle but powerful had changed. I no longer asked myself if I was confident. I asked myself what I would speak next. Confidence had stopped being emotional and became behavioral. It lived in my actions, not my mood. I understood then why confident speakers are not fearless. They are practiced. They have trained their response to pressure. Those 3 days rewired my identity. I stopped identifying as someone who struggles to speak. I became someone who speaks anyway. That shift was irreversible. I was no longer hoping confidence would come. I was building it every time I opened my mouth. Action became my proof. Repetition became my protection. By choosing courage daily, I removed fear's authority. I did not feel fearless. I felt capable. And capability was enough to move forward, speak, and continue growing. This stage taught me responsibility. Confidence was no longer something I waited for. It was something I created deliberately, consistently, and without excuses. That decision changed how I spoke, how I stood, and how I saw myself. I was no longer becoming confident someday. I was confident because I acted like someone who speaks anyway. Those days proved that confidence grows after action, not before it. Each sentence built strength. Each risk built belief. I did not wait to change. I changed by moving first, trusting the process, and honoring effort daily until confidence became normal, stable, and quietly permanent inside me, guiding my voice forward with calm, clarity, and intention every single day, without hesitation, apology, or retreat. Then I stopped practicing sentences. I started telling stories, my past, my mistakes, my dreams. Every story activated something deep, memory, emotion, natural grammar. I wasn't thinking about rules anymore. I was communicating. And that's when English started to sound human, because language was born from stories, not textbooks. At first, I felt exposed. Telling a story means revealing yourself. You cannot hide behind perfect sentences or rehearsed answers. When I spoke about my past, I spoke about real moments, real feelings, and real experiences. My voice carried meaning, not performance. I chose simple stories, a mistake I made, a small success, a memory from childhood. I described what happened, how I felt, and what I learned. I did not stop to correct myself. I did not restart sentences. I moved forward like a storyteller, not a student. Something unexpected happened. My grammar improved without effort. Past tense appeared naturally. Sequence words showed up on their own. My brain connected ideas instead of rules. Story gave structure, and structure gave flow. Emotion played a powerful role. When I felt something, words came faster. Fear disappeared because attention shifted from accuracy to meaning. I was no longer asking, "Is this correct?" I was asking, "What happened next?" Each story became easier every time I repeated it. The story stayed the same, but my English grew stronger. Words became smoother, pauses became shorter. Confidence increased because familiarity replaced uncertainty. I realized that stories activate memory differently. The brain remembers meaning better than information. When I told a story, my mind stayed engaged. I did not drift. I did not freeze. I stayed present. I practiced stories out loud every day, sometimes in front of a mirror, sometimes alone in a room, sometimes while walking. I spoke freely, without notes, without pressure. This method removed fear of mistakes. Mistakes did not interrupt the story. They became part of it. Communication mattered more than correctness. Storytelling also changed how people listened to me. When I spoke with emotion, people stayed engaged. They understood me, even if my English was not perfect. That feedback strengthened my confidence. I understood why children learn through stories. Stories are natural. They connect language to life. They teach structure, emotion, and timing at the same time. By the 15th day, English felt alive. It moved with my thoughts. It carried my experiences. I was no longer practicing English, I was using it. This stage taught me freedom. Freedom from rules, freedom from fear, freedom to express real ideas with imperfect language. English stopped being an exercise. It became a voice, my voice. Stories turned English into something personal, something meaningful, something human. And once language becomes human, fluency follows naturally. It changed how I listened to myself as well. I stopped judging every sentence and started trusting intention. When meaning leads, language organizes itself. I learned that stories create bridges between thought and sound. They give the brain a reason to move forward. Instead of freezing, the mind searches for connection. That search produces language. With each story, my voice carried less tension and more direction. I felt present, grounded, and engaged. English no longer lived outside of me. It lived inside experience. That realization removed pressure and replaced it with curiosity. Curiosity invited exploration. Exploration invited growth. Growth invited fluency. By speaking through stories, I gave English a purpose beyond correctness. I gave it life, memory, emotion, and continuity, and in return, it gave me confidence, flow, and a voice that finally felt like mine. This process reshaped my relationship with language forever, in quiet, lasting ways daily. Next, I listened, but not passively. I listened to feel the rhythm. I copied the speaker's voice. I shadowed, not to understand every word, but to absorb the music of English. And my speaking changed again, because you don't speak better by thinking harder. You speak better by hearing correctly. Before this stage, I believed listening was about comprehension. I thought listening meant understanding vocabulary, catching grammar, and translating meaning. So when I didn't understand everything, I felt frustrated and stopped paying attention. I now realize that mindset kept me stuck. During these 3 days, I changed my purpose completely. I was no longer listening to understand. I was listening to train my ears. I chose short audio clips with clear voices. I listened without subtitles first. I didn't force meaning. I focused on sound, tone, speed, and emotion. I noticed how words connected, how some sounds disappeared, how sentences flowed like waves. At first, it felt useless. My brain wanted answers. It wanted clarity. But I resisted. I trusted the process. Then I listened again, this time with subtitles. Suddenly, patterns appeared. Words I thought were missing were actually there, just spoken differently. English stopped sounding broken and started sounding musical. Shadowing came next. I played one sentence and repeated it immediately. I copied the speaker's speed, tone, and energy. I didn't pause to correct myself. I didn't slow down to feel safe. I followed. At first, I stumbled. My mouth couldn't keep up. My timing was off, but I kept going. Shadowing forced my mouth to react instead of think. It trained automatic response. Something powerful happened. My pronunciation improved without effort. My intonation changed. My pauses became natural. I wasn't choosing how to speak. I was copying how English wanted to be spoken. I understood then why babies learn this way. They listen before they speak. They absorb rhythm before words. Sound enters the body before meaning enters the mind. The more I listened this way, the more my speaking aligned with real English. My sentences felt smoother. My confidence grew because my voice sounded familiar, not foreign. I stopped judging my accent. I stopped analyzing every mistake. My goal was imitation, not perfection. Listening became physical. I felt English in my chest, not just my head. That feeling stayed with me even after I stopped listening. By the 18th day, English sounded slower, clearer, not because speakers changed, but because my ears adapted. I realized how many years I had listened incorrectly. Passive listening trained nothing. Active listening changed everything. This stage taught me humility. I didn't need to understand everything. I needed to trust exposure. Shadowing removed fear of speed. It trained courage under pressure. It taught my mouth to move forward, not freeze. I learned that fluent speakers don't think faster, they hear better. Their brains recognize patterns instantly because they've heard them thousands of times. These days rewired my listening habits. I stopped consuming English, I started absorbing it. That shift transformed my speaking. I no longer forced sentences. They flowed naturally, guided by sound memory. Listening became my silent teacher. It corrected me without judgment. It shaped my voice gently but consistently. By listening differently, I learned to speak differently. I no longer chased clarity. I let clarity come to me through repetition and rhythm. This stage removed pressure. I trusted sound. I trusted flow. And English responded. My ears learned before my mouth spoke, and once my ears were trained, my voice followed naturally, confidently, and without resistance. The final test was simple. 10 minutes, no stopping. If I forgot a word, I explained it. If I felt fear, I kept going. And something broke. Not my English, my fear. At that moment, I understood. Fluency happens when you stop asking for permission to speak. I was no longer a learner, I was a speaker. I set a timer and stood alone in the room. No notes, no preparation, no safety net. Just my voice and my thoughts. The silence before I started felt heavy. My heart beat faster. My old habits whispered that I should wait, plan, or stop. But I didn't listen. I started speaking. At first, my sentences were slow. I repeated myself. I searched for words. When a word disappeared, I described it. I refused to stop. Stopping was no longer an option. Every second I continued was a small victory over fear. Around the third minute, something strange happened. My body relaxed. My breathing slowed. My voice steadied. I was no longer fighting English, I was using it. Fear was still there, but it was quiet. By the fifth minute, my thoughts flowed faster. I spoke about my journey, my struggles, and my goals. I forgot about mistakes. I forgot about rules. I focused only on meaning. At the seventh minute, I felt free. The pressure disappeared. English moved with me instead of against me. I realized that fear survives only when you pause. Motion destroys it. When the timer reached 10 minutes, I stopped speaking and smiled. Not because my English was perfect, but because I had crossed a line. I had proven something important to myself. Fluency was never blocked by grammar. It was blocked by permission. I had waited for confidence, accuracy, and approval. None of them were required.
Speaking without permission changed my identity. I stopped seeing myself as someone who practices English. I became someone who uses it. Those final 3 days repeated this challenge daily. Each session became easier. My voice grew stronger. My pauses became natural. Fear lost authority. I understood that real conversations are messy, fast, and imperfect. They do not wait for readiness, they reward courage. By the 21st day, English felt available. Not perfect, not polished, but alive, ready to be used when needed. I was no longer translating my thoughts, I was expressing them. I was no longer asking if I was good enough, I was speaking anyway. This stage taught me responsibility. No teacher, app, or system could speak for me. Only action could. When you speak without permission, you accept imperfection and gain freedom. You stop negotiating with fear and start leading your voice. That was the moment I became a speaker. Not because my English changed completely, but because my relationship with fear ended. I didn't finish these days fluent, I finished them fearless, and fearlessness is the true beginning of fluency. It gave me clarity instead of excuses. It forced me to face silence and replace it with action. Each uninterrupted minute trained my brain to stay present. Each imperfect sentence strengthened my courage. I learned that fluency grows when responsibility replaces comfort. No permission, no delay, no hiding, just movement. Speaking became normal, not special. English became a tool, not a test. And once speaking feels normal, progress becomes inevitable. This final stage did not end my journey, it unlocked it permanently, quietly, and without conditions, shaping how I speak, think, and act from that moment forward. It continues daily through discipline, repetition, courage, and commitment, guiding my voice beyond fear into lasting freedom and confidence.
21 days ago, I was afraid. Today, I speak, not perfectly, but freely. I am not a different person. I did not become smarter overnight. I did not suddenly gain talent. What changed was simpler and stronger. I stopped hiding. I stopped waiting. I stopped asking for permission. I no longer study English the way I used to. I do not chase rules. I do not collect explanations. I use English to think, to feel, and to express real ideas. English is no longer something I prepare for. It is something I live inside. This journey was never about becoming flawless. It was about becoming active. It was about choosing movement over fear and consistency over comfort. Each day built on the last, not through motivation, but through structure. That is why this works. Fluency is not talent. Talent fades when fear appears. Systems remain when motivation disappears. A system gives you direction when emotions are unstable and confidence feels far away. If you are listening to this now, understand this clearly. You are not broken. Your voice is not weak. Your English is not the problem. The absence of a system was. Now you have one. You know how to train your mouth. You know how to train your mind. You know how to build confidence through action, not waiting. You know how to listen, speak, and move forward without permission. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of your identity shift. You are no longer someone who studies English. You are someone who speaks, and speakers grow every day. Keep moving, keep speaking, keep trusting the process, even on difficult days, because consistency transforms effort into confidence and confidence into freedom. One voice, one moment, one decision at a time, for everyone listening.